Hi everyone, my name is Ainsley, but my camp nickname is Myles. I used to work at camp a few years ago, and I'm back helping with the virtual camp. Today I'm going to be talking to you guys about Leviticus, which is the third book of the Bible. It's not one that people usually talk about because a lot of people just think it's just a bunch of rules, but I think that even though it tends to get a little bit dry in some parts, that it's good to look at every now and again. If you're a kid, I would definitely recommend going through it with a parent because there is some subject matter that you might not understand or your parent might not be comfortable with you learning about at this age, but yeah, just parental guidance is suggested. But yeah, so there are plenty of rules that we think are silly and unfair nowadays. We can probably all think of something that we don't think makes sense right now but is a rule so we have to follow. But we do need to remember that rules are always there to help us live without hurting ourselves or anyone else. The Israelites had a lot of rules that they needed to follow too. In fact, most of Leviticus is a bunch of rules that God gave them to follow. There are many good rules in Leviticus. Some include like don't promise something if you don't think you're going to keep it, don't steal, no lying, don't gossip, and like speak up if something bad happens, that's in there too. But when we do actually read Leviticus, there may be some rules that many years after it was written, we don't think kind of make sense anymore. So there are some kind of silly rules, like do not mix two kinds of fabric together when making clothes, so that cotton polyester blend you're wearing was a no-no. And don't pick up grapes off the ground in your vineyard. And don't forget to use salt when making an offering to God. Although these seem like odd rules to us now, there are two things that I really want to highlight, especially with those last two silly rules, as I coined them earlier. Just because they do seem like silly rules now, they were still very important for the Israelites. For example, when God said, "Do not pick up the grapes that have fallen, leave them for the poor and the foreigner," in Leviticus 19:10, he was not worried that the grapes would be rotten or too dirty to eat. He was making sure that the people that were poor or people that were far away from their own homes had something to eat when they were traveling in like the land of the Israelites. So it really shows that even though the Israelites were considered to be God's chosen people and he was there to help them, God was still making sure that everyone in the world was being taken care of, not just the Israelites. The second thing that I want to talk about is the idea of sacrifices and offerings. So in Leviticus and in a lot of parts of the Bible, they talk about people making offerings or sacrifices to God. And there are many different kinds of sacrifices or offerings, but one example is when the priest in the tabernacle, like Auntie Em mentioned yesterday, the tabernacle was the big tent that God was able to live in with his people. So the priest in the tabernacle would go in around like once a year, and he would have to sacrifice an animal to pay for all of the bad things that he and the Israelites had done over the year. So Christians don't do this now, but it was still really important for us to understand why the Israelites had to do it. So like we talked about before, people were separated from God because they sinned, which means they went against the rules that God had given them. So to pay for the bad things they did, they had to make sacrifices. But as we will learn later in the summer, Jesus came to earth and died so that those who followed him were forgiven of their sins or all the bad things they did, and they were forgiven forever. And they didn't have to keep making sacrifices all the time. So the story keeps going from there, and it just keeps getting better. So I hope that you keep watching the videos every day, and I hope that you enjoy them as much as we enjoy talking about them. See you next time.